To each jar, 1 tablespoon. This is just so in case I have a low acid tomato that I'm just going to ensure that the acid level is appropriate and that it won't spoil and be potentially dangerous. Alright, so my jars have been on my tomatoes for a minute. My jars have been sterilizing. My lids are simmering. My kettle is simmering. I'm going to go ahead and pull out my jars. So while that's happening, I'm going to put my lid on my canner so it can be getting to the boiling point. I've got my tomatoes boiling as well. I have my rings. It's important to note that you can reuse your rings when you're canning. A lot of people think you got to get everything new. You don't. Your jars you can reuse as long as there's no nicks. You want to check the tops and make sure there's no nicks, no cuts, no chips, no breaks on the tops. It's very important. Inspect your whole jar before you use it. Don't wait to put it in the canner and then have it blow up on you. Your rings you can reuse. Your lids have to be new when you can. Now you can reuse your lids to freeze. You can use them over and over again if you're freezing, or if you're just storing like dry goods, like maybe you want to store some pasta in a jar with a lid, then you can reuse your lids. But you cannot use them to can once you've used them. So that's just important to remember. But your rings will last forever. I've had some of these rings since I was first living by myself and first canning. You check for rust. This one has a little bit of rust, but nothing that's going to be any big deal. So I'm putting my rings over there. I have my jar lifter. It has a magnet on it, so I can pick it right out of the hot water without burning my fingers. And I have my my lid lifter. I'm sorry. And I have my jar lifter, which you just saw me use to get my jars out of the water. Now, when I first started canning, I didn't have all this fancy stuff. I just used a pair of tongs. For everything. Another great thing to invest in, it's like 97 cents at Walmart, is a canning funnel. And you just put it just like that. And I'm going to ladle, I'm going to add my tablespoon of lemon juice. I just like, even if I don't use all the jars, you can pour it back, you can use it for something else, but that way I don't forget. It's in there, I don't forget. Okay, so I got my tomatoes are stewing. They are pretty cooked in here. I'm just going to ladle some in here. Now you want to leave, you can do it this way, or you can just put the tomatoes in and then pour your juice over. But what I've done is I've sort of tried to figure out how much water I'm going to need. So you can just scoop out your tomatoes like this. Sometimes I use a slotted spoon. Today I just didn't do that. And you can get all the tomatoes out, and then you can pour the leftover juice over the top. You want to leave 1-inch headspace. What headspace means is it's about almost the tip of your index finger for most people. And you leave that between the jar lid and the tomatoes or the juice and everything else that's in there. The reason for that is the way your jars seal is a vacuum. And let me hold this up here. So in this jar, I didn't have enough to all the way fill it up. You see that I need still about a 1/2 inch. So all I'm just going to do is I'm going to add enough liquid to bring me up to where I need to be. I'm going to dip my dish towel just in the hot water real quick. And I'm just going to go around my rims just to make sure they're clean. And I'm going to pull out my lids, my pre-simmered lids. Put it on there and screw it down. Now you don't want to screw it super tight, just like they always say fingertip light. What that means is like you're not like cranking down on it. And now I'm going to put these jars in, and I'm going to be putting them in the water bath canner for 35 minutes. And now a lot of people think, oh, I only have 1 jar in there, I don't need to do it for 35 minutes. Nope, it doesn't matter how many jars you got in here. You could have 2, you could have 6, you could have 20. It goes in for 35 minutes. My water level is over my cans, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. I'm putting my lid on. Now, when do I start counting? That is something that is always a question. You want to start counting when your pot is at a rolling boil. That means you can't blow on it, you can't wave on it and make the boil go away. The whole time I've been doing this, so it is ready to go. So it's boiling. I'm going to put my timer on for 35 minutes. On in the canner. So here we have the canner. I'm going to show you real quick. I got my jars down there. And I want to make sure my lid is on. This will always sort of spew here, so I keep a towel there. I got my kettle going in case I need to add some water. For this amount of jars, I sincerely doubt I'm going to need to add any more water. If I've been doing like 6 batches or 4 batches, every time you do a batch, your water will drop a little bit. So it behooves you to keep that kettle going and whatever other boiling water you have going, so you can fill it up back to 2 to 3 inches above your can as it's cooking. So I'm going to clean up for a minute while this cooks, and then we'll come back when my jars have done process, and we'll look and see what happens next. Okay, I got my jars out of my canner, and they are back over on the towel, cooling off. An easy 3 cans right there that we did. I cleaned up, I got some coffee, I did some other chores while we waited for them to finish processing, and I'm done. 2 of them have popped, and waiting for 1 more pop, and I always like to line them all up and listen to those pops and count them, and I know that I got some good seals there on my jars.